Alright guys, hello, welcome back. We're going to be doing a monthly reading wrap up today. I'm going to be doing July, August and September because I have been reading a lot slower this year, and so I think we have a total of 18 books to wrap. I have come across some of like infinity star reads, just books that I will probably pick up like yearly or bi-yearly just to reread again because I love them so much. I have come across like unexpected favorites, and I've actually squeezed in quite a few kind of older books that have been on my TBR for so long that I just never get around to. So I've managed to get a few of those ones like ticked off, which was very satisfying and turned out to be kind of fun. So we're going to discuss those. A few of those were a little bit disappointing, but alas, that happens. And I'm not talking like Wuthering Heights oldies, I'm talking like Twilight oldies. Not Twilight, but you get what I'm saying. Grab a drink, get cozy, and let's get into this reading wrap up. Alright, so kicking off with July, the first book that we need to discuss is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. This book is my third V.E. Shwabb book. And I say this because I have followed V.E. Shwabb for a really long time online and I adore her as a person, but I just have not gotten into her books. And I say it's so hard to say that out loud because I truly do just like adore her. And I love her writing style. It's quite lyrical and beautiful, like love, but just the stories themselves have just never quite hooked me, and I don't know why, and it's very painful. Anyway, I picked this up because I was like, I'm gonna try again. And honestly guys, it worked. It was great. I really did love this book, and it was everything that I wanted from Ade Lebreu, with the huge spanning time periods and quite complex story detailing like supernatural entities and all of those things. It just all went really, really well for me in this book. Loved it. If you know nothing about this book, we are following 3 toxic lesbian vampires spanning the centuries. I now understand the hype for V.E. Shwabb. She really does what she does well, and I just think I needed the right book to bring me in. Kind of like Taylor Swift, there's an album for you that will just like, it'll click and you'll be like, oh, of course she's brilliant, you know? I'll be like, you knew she was iconic because she's so well known, you know? Okay, so anyway, that was that. Next up, I read A Deadly Education by Niomi Novak. Honestly, I picked this up because Niomi Novak founded or co-founded AO3, and I have had a love affair with AO3 this year, okay? I've read a silly amount of Hermione, and yes, we have more on this list, but yes, I wanted to read her work because I was like, okay, genius woman helped us found this very, very inclusive, accessible platform. Love that for her, love that for me, love that for us, and I wanted to read her work because I wanted to support this human who has done many wondrous things for my life. So anyway, picked up A Deadly Education. Honestly, the first 25% of the book, if you have seen any of my reading vlogs, you know that about 25% is whether I've decided if I'm going to DNF it or I'm going to keep going. And I was on the fence. I really wasn't sure. I wasn't quite hooked to the story. So essentially we're following Elle. Her name is Galadriel, which I kind of felt a little bit sad that her name was shortened to Elle because Galadriel is such a phenomenal name for a character. Anyway, in this world, kids who are born with magic, instead of like, you know, your classic school magic thing, you know, where you get sent off and teachers teach you magic and it's all lovely and great. No, this is a reimagining where if you are born into magic, essentially there's these things called mals that are kind of like wanting to eat your magic. And so your magic is at its highest when you're, I think, like 11 or 12 to when you're 18. And so essentially this school has been created, or it's found, I don't know, it exists in like this in-between worlds place. It's so hard to explain. When the kids are 11, they get shipped there and they essentially have to like fight tooth and nail just to like survive. They can only bring a certain number of possessions with them. They have to create mana by like doing, I don't know, it's just like a very, like, this is a magic system where you really have to work for it. You kind of are reading and you're like, I don't sure what we're doing? Like, you're being attacked by these beast things that you're apparently meant to be protected from by being in this school, but they still seem to get to you anyway. And then the way that the school is designed is it's kind of like a one of these, whatever this is, okay? And you start, when you first get to the school, you have a dormitory on this top level. Then as the years go down, the school like winds you down. And so when you're ready to graduate, you're on the bottom level, which is near the graduation hall, which is where all the mals wait to try and like eat you, essentially. It's a very strange concept, but very fun, very different to anything else I've read, honestly. And so I did really like it for that reason. I think that's the reason I kept going, because I was like, wow, this is just truly so different. And then there's this really sweet little like romance subplot happening in there. But look, I did end up finishing it. Ended up really enjoying how weird and quirky it was. I do not know if I will continue with the series, but I am glad I read it because it was so different. And I think that like if you enjoy kind of like a vibey fantasy, kind of almost like, it was quite cozy, there wasn't like a lot of high stakes things going on, I think that you would really enjoy that one. Next up on the list was, now if you haven't heard of this book and you have read Fourth Wing, you're gonna want to. I have been getting a lot more into indie pub book this year. I've really been enjoying, as someone who likes to write, reading what people come up with without, you know, all the fine polishing that comes with the publishing industry. I just find it very fascinating, and I'm very interested because there's been such a huge progression of self-published to trad-published pipeline this year, especially the last few years. I really wanted to read this before it got trad up because I had heard it was going to get picked up. It did not disappoint. I devoured this. I could not put it down. Just like within the first few days, it was done. Anyway, so in this world, we essentially have these like this wolf hunter clans, and they are part of like the king's army, and there's this kind of raging war between, like, I believe they're vampires. Marin is not really part of any of this, but she lives like in the slums of the towns like near the kingdom, and her sister gets kidnapped because this has been happening. Like the vampires have been like kidnapping children. And so anyway, her sister gets kidnapped, and her plan is, okay, I need to go rescue my sister. The only way to rescue my sister is to get to the front lines of the enemy, because then I will be near the enemy where she could be. So she enlists in the army to try and get to the front lines, but she doesn't realize that there are bonding trials happening this year, which is essentially where people are offered the chance to bond with a dire wolf. And it's very Fourth Wing. Like, they literally climb to the top of a peak to like bond with these dire wolves. It's a fun time. There are like all of the fun like wolf things that you love from like wolf romances, but this is not them turning into wolves. They have wolves, but because of their like relationship with their wolf, they kind of become a little bit wolfy, which is kind of fun. And I did really enjoy that. This is gonna be part of a trilogy, I believe, or a series. It's at least got another few books going on. I definitely will be continuing this. It's very just like fun and vibey. It's very Fourth Wing. It's very just like bingeable, great time, good fun. My biggest qualm, honestly, and I don't know if this will change with the trad pub version, but the first section, I think about the first 100 pages, I was like, wait, what are we doing? We're doing like everything other than getting to the point. But we get there eventually, and once you're there, it's good. I don't know that we needed that backstory. It was fun to read, but I am curious to see if they reduce that for the trad pub. So anyway, really good, really fun, highly recommend. Next up, I'm not even gonna really go into it, but it was a Hermione fanfic, and it was by Julie Soto. Loves Bitka, I believe, is what she goes by. Anyway, it was good. Is actually what it's called, and it was pretty good. It was just a shorty, kind of fun. I really don't remember too much about it. I think I just wanted something fun and quick and Hermione themed to read, and that is what I read. Then next after that, we read My Friends by Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman is a new to me author, but I adore him. His writing is just so beautiful, and every time I read him, I can't stop thinking about the fact that he used to be like a tractor driver or a something like that, like something hilarious. And I adore that. And I love that now he writes books. And when you hear him talk about books, he's just like, what am I doing? And every time I like have heard interviews, he's like, oh, I like tell my wife, I'm like, this might be it. And I just find it so absurd that someone so crazy talented could have such self-doubt, which is wild. Anyway, this one again hit it out of the park. It was a slower read. It wasn't like, I didn't feel the need to binge it immediately. I was reading this on my like Italian vacation. So I read this when I was down in Italy, just like on the beach. I'm just like open, read 50 pages, put it away. Open, read 50 pages, put it away. And I think I finished it when I got back from my holiday. In this, we start by following Louisa, who shows up to this art exhibition because she wants to see this world famous painting, because her and her friend Fish absolutely love this painting, and her friend is no longer with her. And so she wants to go see it. Anyway, around the back of the place, she runs into this guy who happens to be the artist, and anyway, he kind of doesn't tell her that, but then kind of long story short, I don't know how much to say without ruining it. She ends up going on this like cross-country road trip with this guy's friend, and through their travels, he starts telling her this story of how this painting came to be. And I don't want to give too many details because it kind of ruins it, but just know that it's vibey. Know that we're jumping around different timelines. It's very sweet. It's very, if you like Fredrik Backman, he's got a signature style, and this is just it again in a new form. I definitely think Bedtown for me will always be the pinnacle of Fredrik Backman, but this was a fun summer read. Next up, this one has been on my list for such a long time. I don't know what it was. I think, oh no, yeah, okay. I've been trying my darndest to read a lot more library books this year. I'm really trying to support my local library. I'm trying to buy less books where I can, or even just like, if I'm starting a series and I'm not sure if it's for me, I'll get it at the library if I can, just to see if I want to commit to it. And then if I like it, I'll buy it. It's Shatter me, and yes, I did buy it. So yeah, I'm so late to this party, but I am a die-hard fan of dystopian fiction. I grew up reading in that era. I think I just will always, there will be a special place in my heart for dystopia. This did deliver. I binged it, and it took everything in me not to purchase the rest of them immediately after, because I was like, it will be all I think about for the foreseeable future. But I had other books that I wanted to read, so I was like, put that down, don't think about it. And alas, I have since bought the rest of the series, so stay tuned, because I think we have a reading vlog in our near future. But in this, if you have not read this, we are following a teenage girl, Juliet. She wakes up, she's in a cell, she's like, what is happening? She kind of is having this like really, I think the thing I loved about this is there's this, I'm trying to show you a page without ruining anything. Oh yeah, okay. This is a perfect page. There's all this like writing that are like crossed out, and it's quite unique. The way that this author writes is quite beautiful, and I don't know, it just really hooked me. And yeah, you're almost being put in this head of this girl who feels like she's kind of going a bit insane because she's sitting in this prison and she doesn't really know what's happening. She doesn't know what's happening in the outside world. She just knows that she can't touch other human beings because when she touches them, they die. I truly am not going to say too much more about this. It is such a huge series. I'm pretty sure there's 9 books in this series, and I am so excited to read them all. But just know this was such a fun read. I will definitely be continuing with this series. Super fun. So vibey and reminiscent of my dystopia days. Loved it. Next up on my list was actually recommended to me by, I saw Emmy Reads talking about this book non-stop, and thank God she did not stop talking about it, because I don't think I would have read it honestly, and I feel like I've now had like a little dip my toe back into YA after having a little maybe too much mature content with all my Hermione fics. I balanced them out with YA. And so that book was The Rose Bargain. This book started an obsession and a love affair for the other realm, like the other, what do they call it? The other worlds? The other world. In the other world. Okay, it is not that hard. It's a different world. This was a really fascinating take on the other world. This is like a Celtic mythology thing. In the very beginning of this, we start off with the prologue, which takes us back to, in 1471, the War of the Roses with King Edward, trying to win this battle. And it's this fairy queen emerges into England and goes to King Edward being like, I'll grant you a bargain so you can win this war. And the way she does it is she rigs it that he wins and then he gets to become king, but for like 2 minutes. And then she's like, little jokes, I'm gonna be queen. And so that begins her reign. As part of her ruling, she every year offers all of the humans in her kingdom a bargain, and it's kind of your coming out tradition, if you will. You will go to the queen and you will ask for a bargain. And what I loved the most about this book was the bargains were so funny. It wasn't just like sorry, I'm not making face. The bargains were funny in that if you got something, you also had something taken away. And so someone would be like, I want to be a good baker. And the trade-off would be, you'd be a good baker, but you don't get fingernails. Or you'd like be a great drawer or like a great artist, but your sense of smell would be really bad. I don't know. It just was very funny. That aspect of it I really loved. So anyway, it is high season and Lady Ivy, her sister, has gone missing for a few weeks, and when she came back she's just been a bit weird. Like everything's just been a little bit off. And so anyway, she wants to go make her bargain with the Fairy Queen to say, fix my sister. She is denied this, but kind of a long series of events, she ends up, the queen ends up announcing that her son is going to be courting this year. And so because of the thing that happened with her sister wasn't able to marry and therefore wasn't able to get a bunch of money, so then her family's estate went into ruin, yada yada. So Ivy is trying to win Bram's hand in marriage so that she can save her family, because then, you know, she would get the wealth and the notoriety and all that good stuff. And we have like a bit of a love triangle situation in here. We have a fairy other worlds plot. It was so much fun. Lastly, in July, I read Uglies. This one, look, I didn't love it, but I think that's because this book is true. I don't even know if it should be considered YA. I think it should be considered like YYA, like it's very, very young. It is written for a very, very young audience, and so there's some young adult that you can read that is like, the writing style is not particularly dumbed down, if you will, but this one is truly just very like targeted to a very young audience, and the writing is very, very simple. I loved the opening line, but I think when it came to the writing, that was about it. I think for what it was, it had such a fun premise. So yeah, this is another one of those like dystopian worlds. I was just on a dystopian binge apparently, and in this world you have the uglies and the pretties, and you, I think as a young child, I think maybe when you're 12, I guess when you enter your teenage years, your ugly years, you know, it makes sense. You get taken outside of the city and you get to live in this kind of like camp, if you will, I guess, on the exterior. Like it's separated by a river, and you go live with the uglies until you become, I think it's 16, and then you get a surgery to become pretty. And our FMC, she's just lost her best friend. He turned 16 like a month earlier than her, and she's really lonely, so she breaks into the pretties center of the city to go find him, and he's completely different anyway. Tally then basically returns to the Uglies, and because she doesn't have her friend anymore, she makes friends with Shay, who is kind of this outsider chick, and she keeps mentioning things like, I don't know if I want to get my surgery, I don't know if I want to become a pretty, and Tally's like, what do you mean you don't want to become pretty? What do you mean? Anyway, so Shay convinces her to go meet her friend, to do something. Honestly, the plot of this book has kind of escaped me, but we have something to do with she needs to then go find Shay because Shay has escaped, and the board of pretties, the people who decide if she's allowed to get her surgery or not, essentially tell her that if she doesn't go find her friend, that they won't give her her surgery. So she goes and finds her and sees the other side and yada yada yada. Probably not my favorite, truth be told, but I can see why it is a classic of the dystopian genre. And yeah, I think if you had a younger reader in your life, I think it's a cool concept to discuss this idea of like our ugly years and whatnot. So it definitely serves a purpose. Just didn't really hit that well for me at this time in my life, in my 30s. So, okay, so then that takes us to August. August was genuinely quite a slow reading month for me. It was just a really busy month in my life, and so I read 3 books. One was a reread of a Hermione that I adore. The next was The Disappearances of Draco Malfoy, which is another Hermione. I was just in a phase, okay? We have our moments. And I loved that one. That one's just realistically a retelling of if in the 5th, at the end of the 6th book, if Draco had taken Dumbledore up on his offer to be hidden by the Order. And imagine if Draco had been almost taken on as part of the trio to hunt down Horcruxes. So that was such a fun read because I truly do, like, even when I look back at the movies now as an adult, as someone who adored the series as a child, I can't help but see that was such a missed moment for that character. To have a redemption arc for Draco would have just really been quite beautiful, and I don't really know why we didn't. I just feel like that woman is hateful and doesn't love good things. No, I don't know why she didn't choose to do that, but anyway, I loved that particular take on it. It was really fun. So that was that, and then the last book that I read this month, in the month of August, was life-changing. Cannot believe I didn't pick it up sooner, truth be told. I don't own a physical copy of it, which needs to be rectified because I need to own this book, but The 5th Season by N.K. Jemison. When I tell you, this is probably one of the best fantasy books that I've ever read in my entire life. There is no exaggeration. And it is not a romantasy. I must make that clear. It is just not that. So, The 5th Season is the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I have only read the first one, and it is not because I don't want to read the others. It is because I truly want to savor this series. And the shock factor, the wow factor, the holy, I did not see that coming. Literally, like, I remember reading, there was a reveal moment, and I remember, like, thinking that I haven't figured it out yet, and if I turn this page I'm gonna know what it is. And I was like, I'm gonna flip a coin. I'm gonna flip a coin if it's A or B, because I had a theory whether it was A or B, and I just couldn't figure out which it was. And I just flipped a coin, honestly. I had no idea. It could have been A or B. And I was so wowed, so wowed. Anyway, so in this book we are following, this is what it says on Goodreads because I'm gonna struggle to summarize it. So, this is the way the world ends. Again. 3 terrible things happen in a single day. Asan, a woman living an ordinary life in a small town, comes home to find that her husband has brutally murdered their son and kidnapped her their daughter. And worst of all, across the heart of the vast continent known as the Stillness, a great red rift has been torn into the heart of the earth, spewing ash enough to darken the sky for years or centuries. Now Esan must pursue the wreckage of her family through a deadly drying land without sunlight, clean water, or arable land. Esan doesn't care if the world falls apart around her. She'll break it herself if she must, to save her daughter. Now, it is technically post-apocalyptic, but there is fantasy in here. Like, the fantasy in this is so prominent that it can't not also be that. We have this really fun dance between like 3 different POVs. One of them, Esan, is the second POV, which is a little bit confronting when you first read it, but you kind of get used to it. And then we jump between this, gosh, I can't remember the other character's name. You also have these people who essentially, like, all these like seismic shifts in the Earth's core, like creating these like earthquakes essentially, which is then like spouting off the ash and causing the storms. And so there's these group of people who have like magical powers to affect the earth. I can't remember what they're called, but anyway, it's very cool. And these people are enslaved and they're stigmatized as quite bad, but then they're literally like saving the planet. And so anyway, I really don't know if I can say much more than that. I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to ruin anything, but just know that if you like fantasy, please move this to the top of your TBR because it is just such a phenomenal read. That is it. That's all I'm gonna say. Alrighty, so next up I read Act Like It. This was for a reading vlog that I did when I went to London. I just wanted a fun, fluffy romance to read while I was kind of doing all the fun bookish things that I did while I was in London, and it honestly ticked all the boxes. We're following a group of actors who are on the West End, which is kind of like the Broadway of London, if you will. One of the co-stars is kind of a pompous ass. He is having a bad rep and it's affecting their sales in the box office, and so the team, the directors and things like that, go to our FMC and say, hey, can you pretend to date him because you've got a good reputation, and can we hopefully rub that off on him? It's cute, it's forced proximity, it's fake dating, and it works. So, and it is just set vaguely in London. It's not very, like, very specifically London. I think I talked about that in that other video. So anyway, that one was that one. Fun, fluffy, easy to read. First, Lucy Parker, did love, just like very classic rom-com. Then next up, I read Blood Over Bredhaven. I really don't think I've come to a conclusion about this book. So in this, we're following Sayona, who wants to become a high mage, and high mages are typically only men. And the high mages are kind of like responsible for guarding the perimeter of this like city that they live in, because they've like created this like special bubble, because there's this thing called the blight, and the blight kills people. And these high mages are, you know, working on extending this border so they can have like a larger city, because they've also been allowing the Quen, who live on the borders, to come take refuge in their city, because most of them are being wiped out by the blight. I truly can't say too much about it because to discuss what happens would ruin the book. I think overall I'm very happy I read this, and Wang makes a very fun fantasy world, and this is such a rich world. I understand the hype and why people love it so much. I think there were parts for me that felt a little, I felt like we were screaming the point of like, it's a feminist fantasy at its essence. Like, people will tell you this is like a coding fantasy magic system and that's what is the point. This is a feminist fantasy, and it is like on and on and on about feminism and the patriarchy and racism and all these structures that the patriarchy kind of like instills and propagates. So I felt like we could have toned that back a touch with still everything staying the same, but without having to be like this is how I feel about it. Do you know, know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, overall, fantastic book and really fun. Very glad I read it. First ML Wang book. Next up was a toughie. I have heard so many great things about Stephanie Garber that I knew I wanted to check out her work because I love to see how different authors are doing things. I eventually decided that I didn't want to start with Caraval. I wanted to start with Once Upon a Broken Heart. When I began this book, I did in fact DNF after about 20%. I wasn't getting it. The way it's told, we're following this chick. Yeah, if you haven't read the story, we're following our main chick who falls in love with this guy who starts dating her sister for some reason, and she thinks that he's been cursed or something, and so she goes to the king or the like there's these things called the fates who will like grant wishes, and so she tries to get him back through this guy named Jax who's a fate. And I truly couldn't even tell you the plot of the story. It's so like there's so many side quests. Long story. She's trying to get this guy back. This guy Jax says, hey, sure, but you have to give me 3 kisses. And it's not necessarily to him because his kiss is like the kiss of death. And so he's going to tell her to kiss other people at some point whenever he feels like it. That's the premise. And I did DNF this, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'm not gonna lie. I just like was living rent free in my head, and I was like, okay, fine. Let's see how this goes. I continued it. I'm glad I finished it because I think I get it now once I finished, and I kept reading. I think what is genius about this book that I think that I understand why people love it so much is you truly feel like you are reading like a fairy tale. Like, you know, the childhood fairy tales that you read, that is truly what this is. What I didn't love, it was very side questy, which I think just it's a me problem. Honestly, I just don't think I get a little lost when we have too many side quests, you know? So that happened. I am really glad that I read it though, and I think it is a very like atmospheric, vibey book. I might surprise myself, just like pick it up on a random, like, you know, you just want to have like a cozy indoor day or like lay in the sun and read just like a no cares kind of book. Might be that book. But yeah, overall, can't say it was my favorite, but I understood the premise, and I do actually think what she did with the writing style was quite cool. So I appreciated that from like a writing perspective. So anyway, that was that one. Next up, I decided to get a jump on things for fall by reading Practical Magic. Now, I had heard such great things about this book that I'm pretty sure I put it on my TBR last year, just at the very end of fall. And I was like, you know what, we're going to binge that for next year for the fall. I love this book. This is such a great fall read, and I understand why. And I did a whole reading vlog on it, so I'm not even gonna like go into it too much detail. But if you haven't read it, in this book we are following these 2 sisters. They grow up with these aunts, and they're like deemed the witches by the town, and the aunts give like remedies and things like that, like almost like home remedies, but it's giving like witchy. Anyway, we then follow these girls as they grow up and like move on through life, and then they partner off and they go on to have kids and things like that. So it's like an intergenerational story, and we're just following this idea of like a family curse. I looked it up after I was done because I couldn't quite box this book into any one category. I was like, what are you? You know what I mean? Like, please define yourself for me. This is considered paranormal women's fiction, and I think this book is one of those books that started a genre, which I think is very cool. Kind of like The Secret History started, Dark Academia, it created something new from itself. And so I'm not going to say how, but you do have like a death, like kind of a murder-ish thing, and you do have like a creepy ghost situation in there, but not that creepy. It's like a little bit creepy, but like mostly it is exploring these themes of like older, like growing up, becoming a woman, the dark side, like almost a little touch on like the horror of being a woman, if you will, but in such a beautiful way that it didn't feel like I was reading a horror novel or like anything too gothic or too dark. And it just was so vibey. I must say though, I will say, I tried to watch the movie after having read the book. Did not hit for me. Did not. What was that? Okay, I watched half of it and I did not understand how that was at all related to the book. So if anyone can explain that to me, that would be lovely. But no, do not read that book and then watch that movie, because you will in fact ruin it for yourself. The next book, like God, I've had so many great reads this past 3 months, but this book, truly underrated. I do not see enough people talking about this book, and so that is the only reason that I would say this has to be the one, that if you're going to read any of them, read this one, because I just feel like it deserves so much more attention. That would be Skipshock. First of all, the name of this book, I don't know, I just adore it. I love it. It's just so unique and different. This was one of my, I said I've been trying to read more from the library. Again, I read this from the library and it was so good. I instantly bought it because I knew that I was going to reread it and annotate it. Yeah, great things. Okay, so in this book, we are following Margot. Margot is kind of having a hard time in life. She lost her dad. She's being sent off to boarding school. Anyway, she's on this train going up to Dublin. I think she's from Cork, and trying to go to boarding school. And she essentially closes her eyes. She's kind of looking down, and then she looks up and she's on a completely different train. She has interdimensionally traveled to a totally different world, and on the train is this guy named Moon, who is just a very unique character. And yes, we do in fact, we get his POV as well throughout this, and so she is going up to him being like, where am I, what's happening? And he realizes that she has no idea where she is, and so he kind of takes her under his wing. He's like, you come with me. He is a salesman. In this universe, if you will, in Skipshock universe, there are parallel dimensions that can be accessed, parallel worlds that can be accessed via a train, and each of the different parallel worlds have a different amount of time per day. And because of this reason, the only people who are allowed to really travel between the different places are salesmen, and the salesmen can trade goods between different places. The trade-off is obviously time spent. So if you spend, a day in a 6-hour world versus a day in a 24-hour world, you're gonna have a different span of a life versus if you just spent all of your time in a 24-hour world. It's kind of the concept. Anyway, Moon realizes that she is not from their world, or from any of the worlds. They realize that she is from a lost, cut-off world that no one has access to anymore, and they're gonna try and figure out how to get her back. Yeah, in the front of the book it says, soon Margot discovers that time determines everything: power, privilege, and her own survival. How do you spend time when it's running out, and when you've just met the person with whom you'd spend eternity? Yes, it is a love story also, and it's gonna be a duology. I honestly cannot wait for book number 2. This was so fun, and Caroline O'Donoghue did such a good job with this book. And then last but certainly not least, this book has sat on my TBR for the longest time. I've seen the movie. I think I really struggled with the idea of sitting in to read this book because it has some heavier topics, and I just didn't know if it was going to be for me. Like I've seen the movie, but I was just like, to sit down and read that for hours on end felt like a bit like much. But I am honestly so glad I picked it up, and that would be one of my favorite authors on planet Earth, John Green. We have a YA thing going on for this past quarter apparently. I just get into a mood and then I mood read for that until I get bored and then I move on. So this was the mood. The Fault in Our Stars. I read this in a day and I sobbed. I have never sobbed so hard at a book. Yeah, this was a sob fest. If you've not read this book or seen this movie, we are following Hazel Grace. She is a cancer patient. She is terminal and she's kind of diagnosed as depressed. Her mother makes her go see her doctor and her doctor's like, you should go to, you know, like a group, a cancer kid support group. And so she goes, she meets Augustus Waters. They're so cute. And yeah, anyway, she makes friends with Augustus Waters. He invites her over. They share book favorite things because they're kind of being smitten and adorable and teenagers in love. And he recommends her a book. She recommends him her favorite book. The way that this book is written is that it just like ends in the middle of a sentence, and so he's like, we demand to know how this book ends. And so they go on this like big quest to try and get the author to write back to them to find out what happened in the end. Long story short, they kind of end up going to Amsterdam to meet this guy and lots of drama ensues. It is such a beautiful book. John Green, this man, talented. Yeah, you laugh, you cry, and you come back for more. I would say that's pretty accurate. Yes, that officially brings us to the end of our reading wrap up. I would love to know if you have read any of these, if any of these are on your TBR, and yeah, what you have been reading these past few months. I think I'm going to be doing a reading wrap up at the end of November because I kind of want to get into more seasonal wrap ups and I just want to like realign myself with the season. So we can we'll finish October, November, and then we'll jump back into December, January, February, and we'll be in seasonal reading. So that is the plan, that is the goal. So I'll be back at the beginning of December to do a little wrap up there. And I have some really fun ones that I have been reading that I cannot wait to talk about. Anyway, that is it for today. As always, happy reading, and I'll see you in the next one.